Andrea, but oh god, I'm starting to get sick to my stomach.
I don't remember the moment my life changed. People tell me about it. Doctors, nurses, my family. They all explain what happened, each in their own way. But when I try to remember it myself, there's nothing, just darkness. Like someone closed a door in my mind and didn't leave a light on. I only remember how I felt before it happened. Heavy, tired in a way that sleep cannot fix. Tired in the bones, in the breathing, in the thoughts. I remember sitting there thinking I was just having a difficult day. I didn't know my body was giving up. My weight had become something beyond numbers. When I say 717 pounds, most people hear a statistic, a shock, a headline. But for me, it was simply the weight I carried every moment. It was the air I breathed. It was the pain in every joint, every step. Every morning I woke up, and yet I was used to it. I didn't think of it as something that could kill me in a single moment. I thought I had time. I thought I would change soon. I always believed there would be a soon, but there wasn't. They told me my oxygen level dropped so low that my body started shutting down. They say I passed out. They say the ambulance came. They say I stopped responding. I listened to these stories like they happened to another person because I was gone. My family watched me go limp. They thought I might be dying right in front of them, and I didn't even know. The first memory I do have is waking up in the hospital. Everything was blurry. My body felt heavy and still, like I was sinking into the bed. I tried to speak, but something was in my throat. I felt panic before I understood what was happening. There was a tube in my neck, a tracheostomy. A hole cut into my throat to help me breathe. I didn't know how long it had been there. I didn't know how long I had been gone. Later, they told me I had been in a medically induced coma. A whole week missing. A week of my life vanished into silence. I blinked slowly, listening to the machine breathing for me. Every breath felt borrowed, like I didn't own it, like I'd been loaned life, not given it. I could feel that everything was different. My body felt weaker, my voice was barely there. I couldn't speak without pain. My throat felt raw, opened, vulnerable. I tried to lift my hand, and even that felt like a mountain. I heard voices before I saw faces. My family, faint, muffled, soft like sounds underwater. I remember my sister holding my hand. She thought I was asleep. She didn't know I could hear her. She said, "Please don't leave us." I didn't respond. I didn't know how. I think part of me was still deciding whether I wanted to stay. They told me I had become septic, that my body was filled with infection, that my organs were failing. They had to do everything they could to keep me alive. Machines, tubes, medications, needles. Time didn't feel real. My body didn't feel like mine. I was alive, but I felt like I was standing on the edge of something final, when I was finally able to move enough to use my phone. I didn't know what to say to anyone, so I didn't say anything. Took a picture of myself, the hospital gown, the trachs, the tired eyes, and sent it to my siblings. No words, no explanation, just, I'm still here. But being alive didn't feel like a victory then. It felt like I had survived something that I didn't know if I could live through again. And part of me wondered whether I was strong enough to face what came next. Talking was painful. Breathing felt wrong. All of my strength, all of my identity, all of my defenses were gone. I felt like a child inside a body that was breaking. But I wasn't done breaking. It's because while I was fighting for my life in a hospital bed, life outside kept moving. My family kept living. Time didn't pause for my pain. That's the thing no one tells you about struggle. The world doesn't stop to wait for you. When I learned that my dog, my little companion, Little Bit, had died, it was like someone reached into my chest and pulled something out. I wasn't there. I didn't get to hold her. I didn't get to feel her fur against my hand one last time. She was there for me when I was alone. She stayed beside me when I couldn't stand. And I wasn't there when she took her last breath. I watched her memorial through a screen. Everyone stood there, remembering her, loving her, letting her go. And I was just watching, not part of it. Not truly, just a face on video. Far away, trying not to cry because crying hurt my throat. Grief tastes like silence. People think grief is about sadness, but it's not. It's about absence. It's about space where something used to be. It's about wanting to go home, but knowing home has changed. I wanted to run, but I couldn't even stand. And that's when something inside me shifted. Slowly, quietly, not in a dramatic movie kind of way. Not with a sudden realization or a burst of inspiration, just quietly. I didn't want to die. Not because I was afraid of death, but because I hadn't lived yet. I had survived pain. I had endured my body. I hadn't lived in it. I wanted to feel air in my lungs that I earned. I wanted to move without fear. I wanted to wake up and not wonder if my body could handle one more day. I wanted to live. So I started trying. Not with big dramatic steps, just small ones. Breathing, sitting up, learning to speak with the trach, learning to swallow without choking, learning to walk again in inches, not steps. Progress is slow when you're rebuilding a life, but every inch was mine. When I returned to rehab, the world felt different. I felt different. My body was weaker, but my mind was sharper. The fear was still there, the fear of stopping breathing again. But now there was something stronger underneath it. I wanted to keep going. And I did. Slowly, painfully, day by day, hour by hour. And the weight began to go. Not just from my body, but from my heart. And that is where I will now continue, directly, without pause, into part 2, deep into the emotional core of the journey.
Starting to feel the effects of my health issues.
I don't remember the exact moment it all started to change, but I do remember the feeling. The heaviness in my chest, the way my body seemed to weigh more than it had the day before. The shallow breaths that somehow became harder to take. I had spent so long trapped in my own life, trapped in my own body, and I never realized how much I had been running from myself until that day. I was 717 pounds, and it wasn't just a number. It was a weight that pressed on every part of me, my heart, my mind. It was the constant reminder of years I had allowed myself to slip away while I tried to numb the pain with food. Comfort, distractions, anything that made the world quiet for just a moment. I thought I had time to change. I always thought there would be a tomorrow that would be easier. A day when I would finally wake up and decide that I would do better. But there wasn't. Life didn't wait for me. My body didn't wait. My heart didn't wait. And in the quiet of that day, it made its decision without me. I woke up in the hospital. The first thing I noticed was the light filtering through the blinds. And the strange feeling of a body that didn't feel entirely my own. Machines beeped softly in the background, steady and mechanical, but they were keeping me alive. I couldn't understand how much time had passed, and even when the nurses told me it had been a week, the number meant little to me. A week was a long time to be unconscious, a long time for the world to move on without you noticing. And yet, the people I loved were there, their voices distant but unmistakable, soft whispers of hope threading through the fog of my mind. And then I noticed a tube, a tracheostomy, a hole in my throat that allowed me to breathe when my lungs couldn't. I had never been so aware of how fragile life could be. Breathing became a conscious effort, not a natural rhythm. Speaking was painful, swallowing impossible without care. Every motion was heavy, every movement a reminder of how weak I had become. How much my body had suffered and how much I had survived without realizing it. They told me I had been septic, my organs failing, my life hanging by threads that only the medical team had kept together. I had been so close to death that I could almost feel it lingering in the corners of the room, brushing against my skin in the silence that followed me. Yet, here I was, alive, breathing, existing, even if the body that carried me felt alien and worn. I wanted to cry, but tears were heavy. They pooled in my eyes and clung to the corners of my cheeks. A quiet acknowledgement that I had been through something I couldn't explain to anyone who hadn't been me. The first thing I did when I could finally move enough to touch my phone was send a picture to my family. No words, just a quiet testament that I was still here, still fighting, and it felt small. It felt like nothing compared to what had happened. I had survived, and yet surviving felt fragile, fleeting. I didn't feel like victory. I felt like a body borrowed from life, a guest in my own existence, and it terrified me. The days that followed were a slow reintroduction to myself. Every breath was measured. Every sound from my throat, rasping and unfamiliar, was a reminder that I was not who I used to be. I couldn't move quickly, I couldn't eat freely, and I certainly couldn't pretend that my past habits would serve me now. Life had slowed down to its most essential form, breathing, eating small portions, sitting up, trying to walk. And in that slowness, I began to notice something else. My desire to live wasn't tied to anyone but me. I had always depended on others. I had always needed someone else to push me, to motivate me, to love me through my decisions. But in that quiet, soft room, I realized that my own will was what mattered. Not cameras, not doctors, not family, not shame. I wanted to live because I wanted to be present for myself. Visiting days were always the hardest. When my family came, I felt joy, but I also felt a deep ache. Being with them reminded me of everything I had lost and everything I had yet to gain. Chris cooked for me once, healthier options because I asked. Turkey, cauliflower casseroles, broccoli, foods that didn't feel like punishment. And when we ate together, it felt like a glimpse into the life I wanted to reclaim. But it also reminded me that home was still far away, that the world outside these hospital walls had continued without me, and that returning would require more than strength. It would require endurance, patience, and unwavering commitment. I missed home. I missed my dog a little bit, who had passed away during my absence. I had missed her last moments, the comfort she had given me for so long. And the memory of her absence settled in my chest like a weight heavier than anything I had carried physically. Grief was different from my usual struggles. Grief didn't come with a solution. It didn't come with calories counted or steps tracked. It came quietly, settling into the spaces in my mind, into the silence when I was alone. And it reminded me that I was still living, and that life demanded more of me than I had given. And so I kept going. Every small movement was a victory. Sitting up without assistance, walking a few steps. Learning to use my trach without fear, asking for healthy meals, practicing portion control. Showing up for myself even when my body screamed otherwise. It wasn't heroic. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply the quiet act of choosing to exist, to breathe, to try again, to honor the life I had been given. And slowly I began to notice change. The weight began to decrease, not just physically, but emotionally. The burden in my chest lifted fraction by fraction. The fear of each day lessened slightly. I began to see myself not as the person who had collapsed, but as someone capable of progress, however slow. When my family left after a visit, I would sit in silence and reflect. The quiet was my teacher. The loneliness, my guide. I learned that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes strength is simply staying put, continuing even when the heart aches to run. It's breathing through pain, acknowledging fear, moving inch by inch when every muscle resists. It's showing up for yourself when no one else can. And that, I realized, was the hardest lesson I had ever learned. Now each day is measured, intentional. I eat what nourishes me. I walk when I can. I practice patience when my body resists. I remember the tube in my throat and the week I lost in a coma, and I let it remind me that life is fragile, that each moment matters. And in the quiet, I feel something soft growing inside me. Hope. A fragile, steady hope that whispers, I can do this. I will do this. I am allowed to survive and to live beyond this moment. It's not easy. It's not fast. It's not glamorous. But it is mine. And each day, as I take my first breath in the morning and my last in the evening, I remind myself that living is the only victory that truly matters. Only victory that truly matters.
I'm asleep. I can't control it. Ah, no!
The days following the cookout felt both heavy and light at the same time. Heavy because reality returned in the form of laundry. Dishes, diaper changes, and the relentless needs of two small boys who didn't understand patience. Light because I had tasted freedom. I had seen a glimpse of what life could be when I put in the work. When I chose myself. When I chose health and strength over the familiar comfort of indulgence. Gage and Glenn demanded attention constantly, but even in their cries, I found meaning. I found purpose. I found a reminder that my body, though healing, had a reason to keep moving forward. Carrying Gage had once been a task that exhausted me in minutes. Now, with a body 125 pounds lighter, I could lift him without the burning pain in my back, without the wheezing that once made even sitting feel like labor. Glenn, small and fragile, rested in my arms like a fragile weight of possibility, reminding me that I was capable of nurturing two lives with the same love, the same patience, the same heart that had survived my own battles. Every small success, a diaper changed, a bottle prepared, a smile returned became a milestone that reinforced my determination. But motherhood was not without its challenges. Balancing the needs of two children simultaneously brought waves of anxiety I could not always quiet. When Gage cried because he wanted attention and Glenn cried because he was hungry, I felt torn. How could one mother, one body, satisfy both needs at the same time? I realized quickly that perfection was impossible, but love was infinite. My presence, even when divided, was enough. Each child felt cared for. Each child felt seen. And slowly, I began to forgive myself for the moments I could not do more, for the moments when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me, and for the moments when my body reminded me that I was still healing. The weight of responsibility was compounded by the reality of my C-section looming ahead. My body, stretched and swollen from months of pregnancy, protested with every step. My back ached, my legs were heavy, and every movement reminded me of the physical transformation I had undergone. Yet within the pain, there was a quiet joy, the joy of knowing that I had carried life within me. And now I had the power to bring that life safely into the world. The paradox was beautiful. My body had been fragile, yet it was resilient. It had been weak, yet it was strong. It had been trapped, yet now it was moving forward. Preparing for the surgery was an emotional journey in itself. I found myself reflecting on the hours spent in hospitals, the weeks of rehabilitation, the months of careful dieting, exercise, and mental preparation. Each day had required choices, small, deliberate, sometimes painful choices that, when accumulated, had led me here. I understood now that healing was not linear. It was a series of peaks and valleys, moments of triumph followed by moments of doubt. But even in the valleys, even when I questioned whether I could continue, I knew that I had already survived the worst. And survival had become the foundation upon which I would build everything else. Family support was my anchor. From Chris helping with meals to Amanda and others offering encouragement. I realized that love manifested not only in words but in action. They provided the scaffolding that allowed me to reach higher than I could alone, yet the journey remained mine. Each meal I prepared, each step I took, small workout I completed was a declaration that I was reclaiming my body, my mind, and my life. Even the chaos of the house, the toys scattered across floors, and the constant interruptions from the boys were reminders that life was happening and I was here to participate fully. One of the most profound realizations came during the quiet moments. When the boys slept and the house was still, I allowed myself to look inward, to consider the journey from the heaviest I had ever been to the body I now inhabited. The mirror reflected more than a lighter physical form. It reflected resilience, strength, and courage. It reflected the choice to survive, the choice to fight, the choice to honor myself even when the world seemed impossible. And in those reflective moments, I found a peace that had eluded me for years. The peace that comes from knowing you are capable, that you are worthy, and that your life is yours to shape. The cookout with the gator on the grill had been more than just a celebration of family and food. It was a symbolic marker of progress. Just as the gator had been transformed by fire, heat, and care into something nourishing, I too had been transformed by effort, perseverance, and determination. Each bite of the meal, each laugh shared, each story told around the table reinforced the idea that life could be joyful, abundant, and full of possibility. The work I had put into reaching my weight goals, preparing for surgery, and reclaiming my health was validated in the eyes of those I loved most. And for the first time in a long time, felt truly proud not only of the numbers on the scale, but of the person I had become. Yet, with joy came the acknowledgement of ongoing responsibility. Life with 2 children would not pause for my recovery. The cries, the messes, the demands of motherhood continued unabated. I had to learn the art of balance, giving enough to my children, enough to myself, enough to my body, and enough to my recovery. The task seemed impossible at times, yet each small victory, a clean house, calm baby, a healthy meal, was proof that I could manage, that I could endure, that I could thrive. And with each victory, no matter how small, the soft pain of exhaustion was tempered by the deep satisfaction of accomplishment. Feeding the boys became a ritual, a reminder that caring for others required caring for oneself. The lessons I imparted to them about patience, responsibility, and love mirrored the lessons I practiced daily with my own body and mind. Cutting out snacking, moderating food intake, choosing healthier options. These were not sacrifices, but acts of self-respect. Every decision reinforced the understanding that health was a lifelong commitment, not a temporary goal. And in modeling these behaviors, I was teaching the boys resilience, discipline, and the importance of caring for one's body as an extension of love. The days passed in a mixture of chaos and calm. Moments of frustration collided with moments of laughter. I discovered patience I didn't know I possessed. I found joy in small things: Gage's laughter, Glenn's quiet coos, the smell of dinner cooking, the warmth of the sun on my skin. I discovered that life, even in its messiest forms, could be beautiful. And slowly, gradually, I began to realize that I was no longer defined solely by the challenges I had faced. I was defined by the way I met them, the way I persisted, and the way I chose to move forward, one step, one meal, one breath at a time. Even as surgery approached, I embraced the uncertainty with quiet courage. I knew that my journey was ongoing, that the path forward would have obstacles, and that life would continue to test my resilience. But I also knew that I had survived the unimaginable before, and that survival had instilled a strength that could not be erased. The love of my family, the laughter of my children, the joy of small accomplishments. These were the pillars that would carry me through. And in that realization, I found peace. Looking back, I understood that the cookout, the gator on the grill, the shared laughter and playful chaos were more than simple celebrations. They were markers of progress, evidence that my life was changing for the better. They were reminders that even in the midst of chaos, there is order, meaning, and love. They were proof that the choice to survive, the choice to fight, and the choice to reclaim my life was the right one. And my life was the right one.